I think it's dry. I think my life is pretty dry.
Well, we're going to find
one of the reasons that you're on this podcast, Jim, is because you deal with very dry subjects and yet make them... I want to have some of this too, actually. And you make them sound like bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy, I love bankruptcy.
Everybody
should be bankrupt.
Oh, okay.
Bankruptcy. Do you want to drink some of Brazil's national drink, Molly?
Probably not. I may smell it. It's distilled from sugar cane.
Oh my goodness,
Is it sweet?
it's very strong. So, yeah, like bankruptcy, right? Probably one of the more boring areas of the law, arguably, to a non-bankruptcy lawyer. Is that a fair statement?
I never thought that, but
well, that's because you're a bankruptcy lawyer.
Exactly. So, but you are, and you say it is, so I believe you.
It's one of the less sexy. Wouldn't you say, Molly, one of the less sexy areas of law in the practice?
But I would have to say, I'd have to say I could probably find more topics that would be more boring than that. Only because you have all those levels of what does that person do afterwards? Why are they going into bankruptcy? How can we save them from that? Should we save them from that? And that's money and debt, and so I think that would be kind of exciting.
And everybody's filed for bankruptcy. We reached a high of well over 1.5 million people a year filing for bankruptcy.
Okay,
so if you multiply that by 10 years, that's 15 million every 10 years, 30 million in 20 years. So if you walk down the street, 1 in 10 people you see is filed for bankruptcy, including kids.
Okay, so
that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, but we definitely need to dive into that because obviously that's an epidemic, and obviously if people are doing it, it's a benefit for them in some way, or they would do anything they could to not.
What's the policy here, Jim?
Yeah,
why allow people to wipe the slate clean and
by the end of this, I may wipe my slate clean. Who knows?
Your slate is pretty dirty.
My slate,
if anyone needs a slate cleaning
for my kids, is beyond. Yes.
Well, when I write some of those articles, I go back. You know, what did they used to do in bankruptcy? Well, the Japanese, of course, would kill themselves, the hara-kiri, because it would be wholly without precedent in their society to be bankrupt.
Do they have it now?
I don't think so, not that I know of. In the ancient Roman time, if you weren't able to pay your debts, the main thing that would happen to you is they would sell you into slavery to get the money back. So if you bought $100 from me and you couldn't pay it back, then I would just find somebody to sell you to and get my money.
What would I be worth, do you think?
Oh, there were a lot of slaves in those days. You might not have gotten $100.
I'd pay $100 for you to work for me.
Okay, well, see, that's today. When there's not a lot of slaves. The market
so
for slaves
demand.
is different
Supply and demand.
today than it was back then.
And I'll make it 101.
But what that did, of course, was there wasn't a lot of people willing to take entrepreneurial risk, right?
Right.
Because the loss was great. For example, they say in the United States, basically, almost all businesses fail. The average, personal business lasts 5 years. And if you want to make a successful business, I think they say you have to usually go about 5 times.
Yeah.
So the guys who are successful, try one business, that doesn't make it. They try another business, that doesn't make it. But they're very persistent. Persistence is the key to the current state, right? So they try again. Finally, they make millions of dollars, or like Zuckerberg, they become multi-billionaires. And that's kind of how it works. And so the whole idea is to have the idea of what they call the fresh start, right? That if you're willing, the whole idea, and then maybe it doesn't completely work, but if you're willing, you take all your debts and put them in a pot, right? You take all your non-exempt assets, which for most people is zero, if they're in trouble, right? But you might have some, and put them there. And in return, if you're an honest person and your debts, that you couldn't pay back were simply the result of bad luck, as opposed to fraud or something, then you get what's called a discharge. That's the idea. So you can go on with what they call the fresh start in life as a new person and start over.
Yeah. So it's kind of like also the policy behind having LLCs, right? Protecting people's personal assets. It encourages them to be innovative and to take risks, right? Because they may fail in their business. And so you want to incentivize people to keep taking risks in business, not terrible risks, but some risks so that they keep making money and employing people and paying taxes. You know, I was in Siena, Italy, and Jim, do you know what Siena and bankruptcy have in common?
Siena. They were the big adversaries of Florence, weren't they? Back in the day.
They were.
They still hate each other, don't they?
Yeah. I don't know if they still do, but the first bankruptcy, as I understand it, comes from bank and rot, right? And what would happen is Siena would have these banks were basically benches, right? And I think that might have even been where the word bank comes from, but I could be totally full of it. But lenders, the money lenders, would stand on the corner loaning out money at these benches, and when they lent out money, they had to pay taxes to the prince, to the king of Siena, Prince of Siena or whatever. And if they didn't pay their taxes, the prince would send out his brute squad, and they would break their bench, and that's where and the rot and the bank comes from. Bank, it means breaking your bench. Mm-hmm. This is what the tour guide told us when we were in Siena.
Or breaking the bank.
Or breaking the bank, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still, right now, part of our stop on the tour was the first, or the oldest bank might have been even been in the world, the oldest bank in the world that's still operating. And right outside is the bench, or benches, the area where all the benches were. And
are there still people handing out money? Because I'd like to go then.
Not so much.
Not so much
anymore.
No free money. Is that bank broken there in Siena, or is it whole?
It is still it's the oldest operating bank in the world.
So is there a bench outside? A bank? I
didn't. I saw the bench area, but I think I did see one bench. Yeah.
And are we talking business only or personal?
We started talking personal.
Okay.
Right? We started the idea. That's a personal bankruptcy idea. The idea of the fresh start. Businesses are different. You mentioned the LLC. We also have corporations. We had a very intentional idea in 1978 when unlike today when they come up with these new laws that govern 20% of the economy, healthcare, and they propose them in 1 week and try to present them.
Right.
There came a point in time in about 1970 when Congress thought they probably ought to get a better bankruptcy law. Because the bankruptcy law was antiquated. The last time it really had been revised was 1896. The economy was slightly different in 1970 than it had been in 1896. Things had changed, and maybe we ought to have a new bankruptcy law in 1970. So they had all these commissions, and they got the best people in bankruptcy. The people who had been doing it for years. Ken Klee was one of them. Larry King, a professor in New York.
Jim Lawniczak.
No, I was. I was in 1970. I was 19 years old. So they didn't ask me.
Right.
But they got all these people together, and they had a series of hearings, and they did this. They went through this for 8 years. It took them 8 years to come up with the bankruptcy code. Now it's comprehensive. I mean, I didn't bring the book. It's a whole book. Unlike our law started, and we all went to law school. We learned the common law, right?
Right.
Which Justice Scalia said is that every judge wants to be a common law judge, because the idea is the judge can do whatever the judge wants. Right? Whatever the judge thinks is fair, that's what the judge does.
Yeah.
That's the common law. But this is statutory law. I mean, the bankruptcy code is intended to be a complete recitation of how we handle bankruptcy cases.
Yeah.
What the law is, what the law applies, how you can get your discharge, when you might not get a discharge.
Right.
It's a whole book.
Yeah.
And it took them 8 years to come up with it, and it passed pretty unanimously. There was a bit of a brouhaha. I don't know if the listeners are as interested in this, but at the time, as to whether the bankruptcy judges should be real judges or if they should be referees.
Yeah.
There had been the bankruptcy judges before the bankruptcy code were called referees, and they were not really as important. And the district judges kind of liked that. The district judges, the federal judges in each city, liked being the top of the heap.
Yeah.
And they didn't really think there ought to be specialist judges who were of equal status with them. And basically they got their way, but the bankruptcy judges now are called judges, but they're not real tenured. Article 3, what we call Article 3
They work
judges.
for the president's branch, not for the judicial branch.
No, they work for actually the legislative branch.
Oh, the
They're
legislative
called Article
branch.
1.
Right.
They're called Article 1 judges.
Yeah.
They work essentially for Congress,
Right.
Doing Congress's bidding as to how this law passed. And that took 7 or 8 years and came out in 1978. One of the whole ideas of the new bankruptcy law was to reduce the stigma. And you talked about breaking the bench. Stigma, right? The selling in slavery. To reduce the stigma of bankruptcy because they wanted to encourage people at an earlier stage of their individual lives or at the earlier stage of their corporate lives to use bankruptcy earlier.
Okay, well then let me ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a question on that then. But the banks aren't as forgiving, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, on that next time, that next go around. You're saying that the law is to forgive and wipe the slate, but then you go back to the bank. You've done that. Then you go back to the bank for that second chance.
Yeah.
Is bankruptcy a mark on your record then for those banks?
Well, it can be, but keep in mind, you hear the radio commercial, right? All bankruptcies must be discharged. The idea being that if your bankruptcy has been discharged, we'll give you another auto loan, right? I think you find that in the marketplace, and it may depend on lending practices, that you generally can still get some credit, and you can reestablish your credit. Certainly, you can always get a prepaid credit card, right, and try to build up your credit through that.
Right.
Most lenders want to make money, and they've never made any money by not making a loan.
But Molly, to your point, I think your point is your slate isn't totally clean as it relates to like conventional banks. They're not going to be jumping in line to lend you money after you had a bankruptcy.
Right. And if you want to take that next risk or go into that next venture, you need capital, and to get that, you need a loan. Yeah. But then when you go to do that, you might have that big X saying, this person is a risk.
Yeah. And there's nothing in any bankruptcy code, or I guess it's the Fair Credit Reporting Act and maybe the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Those are the things, and they're separate from bankruptcy, that say how you can be discriminated against or not discriminated against based on your credit record, right? And like what they have to tell you if they're going to make a credit-based decision. They have to give you a whole document and all that. But I don't think there's any law, is there, Jim, that says that I have to extend credit to you even though you've filed for bankruptcy?
No, sure not.
Right. So that black mark on your record is there, and they say that, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Although
there's nothing you can do about it.
You build it up.
But you can rebuild your credit.
Right. No,
I just think it's an oxymoron that here's the law to give you that fresh start, but yet you have an X. It's not truly a fresh start unless you're allowed to keep some money, which you're probably not.
Well, you can keep your exempt assets. And exempt assets in Ohio have recently
for those of us
increased substantially.
For those of us who wouldn't understand what that means, what would that be?
There are certain assets that the state, and it's the state of Ohio, says you can keep free and clear of your creditors. And Ohio has changed. Ohio used to be very, very narrow. I think the homestead exemption was in the $10,000 range. So you could keep equity in a house of $10,000. You could keep equity in a car, I think, of $1,000. That's been substantially increased. I mean, the homestead exemption is now over $100,000 in Ohio. So it varies from state to state. Usually most of the western states and Florida had very large homestead exemptions, so people like to move there.
Yeah.
Because you can put your assets in a home and keep your home.
But there's another clean slate concept there, and that is that without bankruptcy clearing the slate as against your creditors were free to come to your house with baseball bats, or you were going to go to debtor's prison. That was another thing, right? But it was like between self-help and debtor's prison, there wasn't really any uniform across all states method of cleaning the slate that way, right?
Well, debtor's prison in the United States, there were some back in the 1700s and maybe early 1800s. That mostly stopped. And by the time that we had the first full Bankruptcy Act, which was in 1896, the debtors' prisons were gone.
Okay.
The Bankruptcy Act of 1896 wasn't terrible. It did allow for, some relief.
Yeah.
But it certainly encouraged the stigma of bankruptcy. And one of the things Congress did when they passed this new law I mentioned in 1978 to encourage bankruptcies is they softened a lot of the words. People used to be bankrupt. The statute called people who filed for, they were all bankrupts. Now they're debtors. They're no more a debtor than you are a debtor than when you borrow money.
Right.
People used to be adjudicated a bankrupt when they filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Now you simply are
Discharged
as a debtor.
Yeah.
And that was intentional. I mean, it was
Right.
not that. Congress specifically thought, well, how do we encourage people in businesses?
Right.
The main way for businesses is, in most countries, if you lose your business, if you're running a business and you file a bankruptcy, you lose control. The people that ran it into the ground, perhaps with some thoughtfulness, the statutes in most countries say, well, those guys are out.
Yeah.
they ran it into the ground. Not in the United States. If I'm in charge of a company and I want to file a bankruptcy reorganization case in the United States, I can remain in my job, making my money,
Right.
Running the company in bankruptcy. And that was also intentional.
And what do you lose then, though? Like, what? Just the debt?
Well, there are some negatives to filing a bankruptcy. I mean, it's expensive. You have to pay, all kinds of lawyers and professional fees. It's very hard for a small business to survive a rigorous bankruptcy procedure with all of its. There's a lot of things you have to do. There's also, in my mind, one of the biggest problems businesses face when they file bankruptcy is the loss of customer confidence in some ways. If you have a business that
Right.
requires lead times, and for example, once about 10 years ago, I had a locker company that filed for bankruptcy. Well, they sold lockers to schools, and the schools would order them certainly by the spring, right, intending to have them installed usually in the schools during the summer when the kids were gone. And they wanted the lockers to be there and ready to go when school opened in September, say, right? So they would order the lockers, say, February, they place an order. We want you to deliver us, 1,000 lockers for our new school that we just built, or 1,000 lockers for the school we just renovated. And then we're going to put them in, deliver them in July when we're not, in school anymore, right? And we'll put them in, and that'll be great. Well, the problem is if I make that order to a company that's in bankruptcy, I think, well, I'm placing the order in February, but are they still going to be here in July? I don't know.
Right.
If they're not here in July, I'm not getting my lockers. That's not good. What am I going to do? I have a school with no lockers. So why am I going to use that company? I'm going to use the competitor company. Plus, of course, companies like to sell. The competitor company knows that I'm in bankruptcy. Right. They go to the school and say, don't use Lawniczak. My God, he's in bankruptcy. Sell to me. Buy from me. And that often happens. So, there's still problems in bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not the greatest thing ever. But the idea was we have probably still in the United States some of the most, what I call, debtor-friendly laws in the history of the world.
Jim, how does one want to be, or I should say, this is a two-part question. First, how does one become a bankruptcy lawyer? But maybe more importantly is, why would someone want to be a bankruptcy lawyer? What is the Jim Lawniczak path to bankruptcy law?
Well, actually, bankruptcy in my career has been very cyclical.
Yeah.
People tend to become bankruptcy lawyers when bankruptcies are hot, and there's a lot of them.
Which is after a down economy?
It depends. It's usually when there's a lot of change. So I go back. I don't know if the listeners will remember this. I may be one of the only people, although I wasn't old enough for the Bankruptcy Act in 1970s. I was still old. In the 1980s, I don't know if anybody recalls, in today's day of prime rate of 2 or 3%, and people paying 3% interest when the prime rate hit 20, right? In the 1980s, under our friend Jimmy Carter as president. Well, at 20% interest rates, you could be bankrupt pretty fast as a company, and there were all sorts of bankruptcies, mostly caused by, I would say, high interest rates.
Right.
If your business is paying, 20% on the money it borrowed, and even keep in mind, almost all businesses borrowed money on an adjustable rate. Nobody lends money to a business on a 30-year fixed.
Right.
They lend
Sure.
They lend, you pay prime plus 2, say. Or when prime reached 20%, your interest rate on your $10 million loan was 22%. Well, it's pretty easy to go bankrupt. And in the early 80s, there was a huge series of bankruptcy cases across the country. 1980, after the new bankruptcy code just came in 1978. It was very debtor-friendly. It encouraged companies to file bankruptcy, even if they weren't really insolvent. Texaco filed a bankruptcy, even though it wasn't insolvent, when it had that judgment entered against it in the Pennzoil case, right?
Okay.
When they had the $1 billion judgment. So they filed a bankruptcy, even though they weren't insolvent. So there were all sorts of bankruptcies, and bankruptcy, being a bankruptcy lawyer at that time, a corporate bankruptcy lawyer, became hot. It was a hot area of the law.
Huh.
And I started out with a couple of corporate law firms in Chicago, and I ended up, I was going to be in litigation. I didn't really like litigation. I didn't like the
contentiousness?
Yes, that's it. You were a litigator, Alex.
I was, and I will say this too, having worked on bankruptcy cases a number of times, it's amazing to me how much deal making happens in bankruptcy just to avoid the expense and uncertainty of adversarial proceedings, of the litigation. Everyone is so cooperative in bankruptcy court.
Yeah, well, you have to be, Alex, because if you're not, the business isn't going to make it. Right?
Yeah.
The business is already on a string, about ready to go under, and if it's going to spend, $5 million of legal fees to decide whether an issue is resolved one way, it's not going to make it. And if it doesn't make it, not only do the business owners lose their business, the creditors don't get paid either. So they're all kind of in the same leaky boat. Right? We're all in the same leaky boat that's leaking and about to go under, and if we rock the boat, we're just all going to sink together. So
what were you doing in Chicago? What were you doing in Chicago?
I graduated from law school, and I was a law clerk. Actually, I was a law clerk for a federal district judge in Detroit, who at the time, and this didn't really strike my interest in bankruptcy, I got to be honest, but at the time, he was the chairman of the Federal Judicial Conference on bankruptcy. And I had to write some stuff for him about bankruptcy, and that was the time when the bankruptcy code was coming in, 1978.
Okay.
So that was big, bankruptcy was really big then in the minds of everybody, and so his duties as chairman of that body were fairly extensive, and I was his, chief law clerk, so he had me do a lot of research and work and helping him on that. But that didn't really do it. I went to Chicago with a small law firm to be a litigator, but it turned out that they had several bankruptcy cases, and I ended up just being on them. I was an associate there, and they said to me, somebody called me into their office and said, "Hi, Jim, we got a new case. This is a bankruptcy case, and we're going to work on it, and you're going to work on it."
It's amazing to me, Molly Gebler, how many lawyers out there like Jim and I sort of end up in a practice area rather than intentionally pursuing it, right? I mean, it's almost like, you ever hear that saying, you don't choose the books you read, they choose you? Well, you wouldn't know this much because you don't read books.
I did buy a book when I was in New York City. You'll be so proud of me. Yeah.
What book was it?
You don't want to know.
All right.
Andy Cohen's.
I was gonna guess like 50 Shades of something.
Yeah.
No, but that's definitely, so that was the case for you. That was definitely the case for me. I mean, I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney.
Well, and then that firm I was with started to basically implode, and they ended up breaking up about. So this would be, I was there for 3 or 4 years. So this was the mid-'80s, about 82, 83.
Yeah. And
the firm was clearly breaking up, and I clearly had to get a different job. I saw the writing a little faster than anybody else, but that firm about 2 years later was completely gone.
Did they have to file for bankruptcy?
No, they didn't. They just, and what ended up happening is the number one rainmaker there took his business elsewhere with only 2 lawyers.
Yeah.
Leaving everybody else kind of high and dry. And I was an associate. I wasn't expected to bring in business. But I was sort of looking for a job, and at the time with bankruptcy being hot and the big firms going into it, all the big firms were looking for bankruptcy talent. And I had some experience, and so Mayer Brown and Platt, which was a big firm, I guess the second largest firm in Chicago at the time, and who represented a lot of banks, including the Continental, I remember the name, the Continental Illinois National Bank and Trust Company of Chicago, which unfortunately is no more.
Because of their name, I'm sure.
No, it was a great name.
Can't fit that on a shirt.
So how'd you end up in Cleveland?
When I went to Mayer Brown Platt because they were looking for bankruptcy lawyers, and so I had to be a bankruptcy lawyer because that's what they needed.
Yeah.
But there was a huge need in the 1980s, and particularly it was kind of an interesting era because I was sort of a mid-level and then a senior associate, but there was so many bankruptcies and so much bankruptcy work that I really was doing partner level work because there was nobody else, because there weren't any bankruptcy lawyers. There hadn't been any.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a new development. And it got to 1988, and actually I ended up coming to Calfee Halder here in Cleveland because they didn't have any bankruptcy lawyers yet, and they were looking for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a chance, to come and sort of be the head of the department.
And that's who you're with now.
I stayed there forever.
I was going
You've
to
been
say.
in Calfee since 88?
1988. May of 1988 I came.
Molly, so I was at Calfee with Jim. That's how we met.
Okay.
And I was a young associate there.
Whippersnapper?
Young whippersnapper.
Yeah.
And I needed CLE, continuing legal education, right? And somebody said, well, you should go to Jim's CLEs because they're hilarious, right? And I'm like, it's bankruptcy. How funny could it possibly be? And they're like, trust me, you should go. So I went and I sat in the back of the room. And sure enough, man, Jim can tell bankruptcy stories and make them actually sound interesting. You would never imagine it, but yeah, the whole place. I remembered it was at the one of the predecessors to the CMBA, to the Bar Association at that time. It was in some meeting hall there, and you had everybody there laughing, Jim. And I even still remember some of the bankruptcy rulings that came out of that CLE.
Yeah, don't go to too many more of them, though, because my number of stories are limited.
Yeah.
And you're going to be getting repeats.
Right. I don't think I've gone to any CLE in a long time, much less a bankruptcy one. I need to, I think. And then the other thing that I learned at some point about our friend Jim is that he is an avid numismatist. Did I pronounce that right? Numismatist?
I think so.
And for those folks who aren't good in the vocabulary world, what would that mean?
It's someone who really enjoys numismata.
Okay.
Now you
for
know.
those of us who aren't Latin.
Is that it's coin collecting? Coin collecting.
But I don't really do coins.
I did know.
You
I
know?
do tokens. I like tokens.
Tell me more.
What is that? What do you mean?
Well, a token is, and this, they can be in metals, but businesses, well, you have one here, don't you? Well, here's a token, kind of, in a sense. The Alex Gertzberg glass.
Oh.
Right, the glass with Alex Gertzberg, this is an advertising Alex Gertzberg law firm, right? You can advertise that in many ways, and this would be collectible. Now, not now, because nobody would care, because you're too recent. But if
Bite
this
your
were,
tongue,
if this,
James.
no, but I mean, if this were from, say, a business from the early 1900s,
Gotcha.
this would be extremely valuable.
Well, so wait, you define token to mean any kind of portable
Tchotchke.
collectible.
Yeah, it would be.
So how is that different than like an antique connoisseur?
Well, I don't. Well,
Because yours has to have a name on it.
Yeah, but my favorite thing is something called an encased coin. What people used to do, and they still do, and you could make one today if you wanted to, is you get an aluminum and you cut a die, and you put on the die anything you want. Like Alex Gertzberg Law Firm, 100 North Main Street, Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
Like the pennies that you put in that
Kind of
machine.
similar, but it's aluminum and it's round, so it's aluminum. The
Okay.
pennies, right?
Pennies they come
And
out
you
little
put a
oval.
coin in the middle. The whole idea. Originally, this is not true today anymore with the penny,
Yeah.
but the idea, the salesman would sell it to your business, say, Alex, no one's going to throw money away, my God. So why don't you put this penny, go back to 1910,
So
put this penny
silver,
inside your...
and there's a
Well, it's
penny in the
aluminum.
middle. Yeah, aluminum. And then there's a coin, a
Yes,
penny
correct.
in between it, and then on the aluminum it
Yes.
says Alex Gertzberg's office.
Yeah.
I have seen those.
Yeah.
I
And
know.
what's neat about that is there's all sorts of tokens, but you never know really what year these businesses were from. But the coins are pretty self-identifying. I mean, if it has a 1910 cent in it, it was probably put in around 1910. If it has a 1985 cent in it, it was probably put in around 1985. And there were all kinds of interesting sort of series almost. For example, in 1948, General Motors, for their Chrysler division, had a series. Almost every Chrysler dealer in the country, even little tiny ones, put out an encased coin. So there are all sorts of Chevy dealers with 1948 or 1947, which I think were made in 1948, but with 1947 cents, with those cents in them. And there's thousands to tens of thousands of them. And at the same time, Chevy had an advertising campaign. There's a case coin for this too. They called SA, which they claimed stood for satisfaction always, but everybody else thought it stood for the word you couldn't then say on national TV or on national radio, which was sex appeal. I mean, the word literally, you could not have an advertiser back in the 1940s with the word SEX in it. That was a banned word. And so I think Chevy was trying to suggest that the 1940s Chevys were a sexy car.
And is the value of these coins based on, like you're saying, Chevy put out a lot, so that wouldn't be that it's easier for you to find those versus somebody else who maybe made it a limited run, or what are the values?
Well, they vary. I would say almost every Chevy piece that's in decent condition will sell for at least $10 to $20.
Okay.
But there are some people, and I know who they are, there are some people who really want to have one of everyone. And if they don't have it, and somebody else doesn't have it, there can be bidding wars on them, and the prices could go into the hundreds.
Wow.
Where do we bid and
have
wars on those?
This has been the advantage of eBay. They used to, before the days of eBay, I will say 1998. Before the days of eBay, the only way to find these, you could go to a coin show, and some people might have some, but fairly rarely. But there were people, and I have no idea how they got them, around the country, who would have mail order sales of advertising tokens. And they used to have large sales. And I would say they would sell 100 to 200 pieces by mail bid auction of these pieces. This is go back in the 1990s.
How could you show, or how could you make sure that they're not replicating them? I mean, it's stamped aluminum.
Well, you can, just like with coins, I mean, you can look at them and see how they look like. Is it possible? Yes. The problem is you could not really make any money. This is why it's for, right? You know, at 10 or 20
bucks.
Plus, the other problem is there's a limited number of collectors. Right? And so once you fill the market, for example, there used to be a teddy bear encased for teddy bear bread in the 1910s, and it was in the shape of a bear. Well, almost all these are just round.
The case was?
Yes.
Okay. So it would put like a real coin in there.
Yes, it was for different companies for teddy bear bread. Teddy bear bread was made in Philadelphia. That was the most common one, and they would sell for $600. And they were very rare, and they were very cute. The teddy bear encased. Okay, so that was expensive. What happened was, and I don't believe that this was fraud, but apparently the family had a hoard of them. And they started leaking the hoard to the market. And the market sort of got the impression that there were way more of these teddy bear cases out there than there ever had been. And so everybody who wanted one had one. I mean, I have one, and I don't need another one, really, right? And this is a very niche collecting. I mean, there's not like this. That's why eBay is the only way to find these things, right? Because there's only 60 people in the country who want to buy them. Oh, she just found a teddy bear case. See?
See, I have to tell you something. It's
right
a mystery.
Fascinating.
There it is.
It's a really.
But anyway, they're in the store.
Yeah.
The
And
price
we will put
basically
this up.
dropped from $600 to you can get one now for under $100 because of the discovery of this hoard.
I've never heard of encased coins before, and I definitely have never learned.
There's the bread one. See the bread one?
That's
Of
what
anyone,
we will put up on our Facebook for
collecting
everybody
them.
to see. I mean, this is
That's a cute one. That sells for about $20 or $30.
This is very intriguing.
It's in the shape of a loaf
Well, you
of
guys
bread.
have a lot in common because Molly is a collector as well.
Wow.
What do you collect again, Molly?
Wedgwood.
Wedgwood. Have you
And
ever heard of
water
that?
for
See, that's what I said,
China.
Jim.
Oh,
China and Toby jugs and
Yeah, but the thing about the Wedgwood is when you see them, they're all a little scary. Right?
no, that's the Toby jugs.
The Toby jugs?
The Wedgwood is, you've seen it 100 times. It's blue with the white piping.
Oh.
It's in place.
Oh,
and
yeah, no.
glasses. That's
I was talking about
Wedgwood.
like the troll-looking things.
So it's very beautiful.
Those are, yes, those are Toby jugs are,
No, there's another word for it that we used last week.
it has a face on it.
Yeah, it's like
a
this.
mug that has a face on it.
Is it a mug?
Toby jugs.
That was something else.
And they're collectors, and I told you they're about $500 a piece.
They're frightening.
So that's way better than a case.
Royal Dalton.
That was it. Royal
That's
Dalton.
Who makes the Toby
Royal
jugs.
Dalton.
Yes.
Are they making it still today?
You know what? I don't know. I wouldn't buy one that is of a date today. You know, I go for the unique, clever ones. Like you do, like the bread.
Right.
I would like some psychologist out there or sociologist or just someone among our 10,000 listeners
Yes.
to send me an article or some other scientific study that explains the differences in the brains and the neurology of collectors of odd things versus like someone like me who can't imagine spending time collecting rare things like that and getting excited about them. Like people, I do get the historic part. Like I've got a coin from Marcus Aurelius, right, from his time in ancient Rome. That is interesting to me because I'm really interested in ancient Rome.
Well, now you can understand.
But like,
why don't you have a whole collection, one from every emperor?
But see, but so I would rather just read about ancient Rome than collect, right? I never understood and the other thing is like, and this is the other thing I don't understand. People who collect odd things, like unique antique things.
Let's just say unique than odd.
I'm gonna go with odd, Molly.
I mean,
by the way, people use the word unique all the time when they're selling stuff on eBay, and I know they're not unique because I've got one too.
Well, right.
These two things. I mean, people collect belly button lints. Okay, so our collections are pretty on the door.
When you put it that way,
they do.
I think it's funny how people who collect unique things, odd people like yourselves especially, can look at them and say, "Wow, this is really beautiful," right? Like the Royal Dalton. I bet you, Jim, if you've seen these things, they're like they look. Yeah, let's show Jim what a Royal Dalton looks like. Like, have you ever looked at one of those things, Molly, and said, "Oh, this is a really beautiful piece"?
You know what? As mentioned, I got them from my mother, which today is her birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
And so I fell in love with that because she collected those. So, you know, it's so funny because I was just looking at them this morning, wondering which one my daughters would want. So, yes, I do look at them, and I enjoy them, and I love them. And, all right, so that's a Toby jug.
Oh, my. Where did it go?
So they're all different faces.
Well, that's not really China. That's more of a
ceramic for these, yeah.
Oh, only $359.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Those things, I get nightmares when I think about those.
Well, but see, they're all different. They're
But collectors of those are like, wow, this is a really beautiful piece.
And they're famous people that you would know. Like I have this one. I just got it at an estate sale.
Frightening.
That's the one you have?
Well, yeah, I've got about 6 or 7 of them.
Frightening.
But yeah, no, not frightening at all.
Anywho, so, all right, so we've talked about you collecting stuff.
I would like to talk about, if I might, this 3R program that you do or involved with is it Shaw High School or the East Cleveland Public School?
Pretty impressive.
That's interesting.
It's the same.
Yes, it is. My daughter was at Collinwood, so that's obviously why she's a special ed teacher, was a special ed teacher there. But
not far from Shaw.
No.
Do you still do that, Jim? Do you still? Well, first, what is the 3R?
Well, there were 2 different things that all happened at the same time.
Yeah.
My daughter went to back in about 10 years ago. Went to Cleveland State, and she got a master's in what do they call that? Urban education.
Okay.
And while she was there, she was student teacher at Shaw. And she had been in mock trial, and of course that's sort of the only sort of legal thing that I'd known for high schools for years. So I asked her about the mock trial program, and she said they didn't have one. And at the same time that was happening, you know, I was sort of focusing in truth on the problem that we claim as lawyers, that we don't have enough minorities in the practice of law, which we don't. Now, the question is, why don't we? And the answer is, I don't know. And I'm not even going to try to guess why we don't, but we simply don't. And a lot of people, and I'm going to get in trouble for this probably, but a lot of people believe in diversity. And I'm really against diversity. I don't think we really need diversity. For example, we don't have diversity of people that have brown eyes and blue eyes. Nobody stands around and say, my God, we don't have enough blue-eyed lawyers here, we better find some more. What I think the goal is not to have diversity, but to have complete, in a sense, opportunity and access. So, for example, nobody's ever, I don't think, someone said, we can't hire that person, even in their mind, because they have brown eyes. It just doesn't happen. And that's sort of where we have to get with things like race, in my opinion.
Right.
So it's not diversity we're striving for, it's equality we're striving for. But the answer is we clearly don't have equality. I mean, there's just no question about it. Why, I don't know. So I'm thinking about this, and I thought, well, you know what? Here's the thing, okay? If I can find, perhaps, one or two, so call them diverse people, kids, who aren't lawyers, who might become lawyers, then I'll have done my job, right? Just like I can't save every dog in the country, but if I save one dog, and you save one dog, and you save one dog, all the dogs will get saved. Okay, so that was my new idea. I'm going to do that. And so when I asked my daughter if they had a mock trial team at Shaw, she said no. And I said, well, why don't we have one? Okay, so that was sort of the plan. Maybe we should have a mock trial team at Shaw. And there's going to be a thing here that's really amazing that I didn't even know at the time. Okay, so at the same time, the Bar Association was coming up with this 3-hour program.
Right.
The idea was we're going to go to the schools and to the 10th graders, and we're going to have a program, and we're going to keep coming so they know that we mean business, okay? And we're going to sort of mentor to the kids. Let the kids know that we care about them, sort of help them out, give them some guidance. Technically, we were going to help them prepare for the Ohio graduation test. Okay, I never thought that was the main purpose, but okay.
Do you remember what the 3 R's were?
Yes, responsibilities, realities,
rights.
Rights. Correct.
Got it.
Okay, and so so the Bar Association was putting that program together. I think Hugh McKay was president of the bar, and he was a great idea, and it's still working today. But there were 2 separate programs, okay, but they happened to start at the very same time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I said, my daughter said, well, maybe we can get this mock trial team together, and so we did. And we started the mock trial team at Shaw, and Michelle Proya, who was then at RPM and had been a long time sort of mentee of mine, a young lady, said she would help me, and so we started the team, and we had a coach, and we had a team together, and we put it together, and the team didn't seem very good. And it turns out, I had no idea, but hiding at Shaw High School was a woman, Laura Uragati Eiler, who had retired from mock trial, who had, in the 1980s and 1990s, been mock trial coach for Shaw, and had led Shaw to more state championships than any other school in the state of Ohio.
Wow.
And what was then an inner city school. Okay. She was still there, but she had stopped doing it because her daughter was young and she wanted to spend time with her. Okay. And as a matter of fact, the Ohio Mock Trial had an award for the best teacher of the year, and it was called the Laura Uragati Eiler Award.
Oh my God!
I had no idea of this.
And she was a teacher still.
Yeah, she was still there.
And
but she wasn't doing it. Even the first year we brought her back, she was not doing it. But as we got to the competition, she decided that she would pitch in. Okay.
Let's pause for a second. Wait. So you earlier said when I joined the mock trial team, it wasn't that good.
Correct.
So this champion mock trial historic teacher is just observing you guys.
No, she wasn't even doing anything.
Right. No, I know.
But here's
she
the
was
difference.
watching you muddle through.
Well, see, Lori knew
I gotta get
who the
involved
good
now.
kids were.
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't have the good kids were not participating on our team. All right. And then the question became one, and it was a very touchy kind of question at the time. Okay, who should be on the team? Who should be actually getting to do the project? Should we go with the best team, the people that really hadn't been participating? It'd be like a football team. We've been practicing for months, right? Okay, we got a team. It's not very good, but the people have been practicing and working their butts off. And all of a sudden, 2 kids who've been in the school come in, right? Come in before the big game and say, "Well, I'm willing to be the quarterback and the star running back." Well, do you let them? And there was some disagreement as to whether that should happen. All right. But it turned out that it did happen, and the team got sort of created at the last minute, and it was a really good team, okay? And that team won. In Ohio, there's a districts, then a regional, and then the state championship. To win the districts, you have to win 2 trials. And keep in mind, when we started this program at Charlotte, we were the only school of our sort of kind participating in the Ohio mock trial. All the other schools were schools like Solon,
like Catholic,
and Beaumont, the School for Girls, and schools like that. Okay, and so those were the schools we were going up against. So we won the two rounds in the district. We won 2 rounds in the regionals, and we went to the state championships with that team.
And this was still this first year or the second year?
First year team. And unfortunately, at the state finals, just before the first trial, one of those 2 young ladies who I mentioned who had come on the team at the last minute to take over and who were very, very good, got sick and ended up actually going to hospital. And so she couldn't perform, and we had to find a substitute. We almost made it even then. I think we had a good chance to win the state championship that year with that team. But we didn't make it.
Well, you made it to the state final.
Well, yeah, and then the next 3 years we had a new team because all those kids were seniors. But we had a new team, and Ms. Eiler came back to be the coach, and she and I think made a pretty good team together in terms of what to do. And then that was really amazing. And this is one of the young ladies who I think is going to become a lawyer. But so Ms. Eiler had a good idea of who she thought should be the team. And what we would do at the beginning of the season was we would schedule scrimmages against the other teams, but with pretty raw people. And Ms. Eiler did have one really good idea, I think, which was really the best that we did, is we did not script the Shaw kids. We did not tell them what to say. We helped them, we talked to them, but we did not write out their speeches, we did not write out their questions, we made them do it themselves. And what that did was, of course, it made them much more capable of thinking than the students for which the legal advisors just brought out a bunch of questions. Okay.
Plus more engaged.
So plus, we didn't tell them anything at the beginning. So we went in, and we were going to have the scrimmage, and there was first team. There were going to be 2 scrimmages going on at the same time. So we had 2 teams, and I think we were scrimmaging Archbishop Hoban from Akron, who was a very powerful mock trial team. They always have great teams. So they had 2 teams. And our number 1 team, we had taken our best witness and tried to make him into an attorney. But he was a terrible attorney because he talked too much. Maybe I talked too much. But he talked too much. He couldn't. He was a great witness, but he was a terrible attorney. But he was on team 1, and Ms. Eiler and was watching team 1, and I went and watched team 2. And all of a sudden, this 10th grader who we'd never seen before stood up, and with no coaching and no anything, was I would say the first time I saw her, she was pretty close to a seasoned attorney. I mean, she was asking questions in a way that a real attorney would ask questions.
Wow.
She was cross-examining in the way a real attorney would and I just sat there with my mouth open. I mean, it was just like, where did this young kid come from? And who taught her this stuff? Which the answer was nobody. And so she quickly made the first team and was our sort of anchor person for 3 years and was really incredible. She may have been, and I think she might, the best mock trial attorney that I've ever seen in the state of Ohio. As a high school kid. High school kid.
So how long have you been doing this with Shaw?
Well, it's been now 10 years.
10 years.
And so for the first year, if you look at it, in the first 6 or 7 years, I mean, we were like 14-0 with our best team at the districts, and like 8-1 with our best team at the regionals. I mean, we were basically, as an inner city school, in an intellectual activity, we went about 23-1 against the schools like Solon and Orange and the other. So for example, when a school like Solon met us, they were petrified. I mean, they thought, oh my God, what a horrible draw, we got shot.
In not a way that they're typically petrified to meet Shaw.
Well, exactly. Yeah, even in football.
Right, an educational.
But anyway, what also happened, and it's part of the 3 hours too, because I became the captain of the team of the 3-hour team at Shaw, and I've sort of cut down. I used to go out on 3-hour day, which is once a month. I used to go out for 4 classes, all day, and now I only go to 1 class, like most people do. But the other thing we did, and the bar did this too, but we did it ourselves, is we created interns. And it started pretty much when one of those 2 women I told you about, Shayla Turner, basically asked me for a job. And I said, why not? We'll hire you as an intern. And we hired her as an intern. And then the other one who got sick, about 3 or 4 weeks later, says, why does Shayla have a job at your firm and I don't? And I gave her the easy answer. She asked me and you didn't.
Yeah.
Which shows you in life, I mean, you got to take the bull by the horns and go for it.
Right.
So she got a job too. Actually, Natasha has ended up. She went to Syracuse and graduated very high in her class, and she then went to the Teach America program and taught there in Atlanta for 2 years. And she then, since this started 10 years ago, right? So this has been 10 years. So the 4 years in college, 2 years, 6 Teach America. She then went to law school at the University of Georgia, and has graduated. And I think she got a job in Tennessee in a law school, like in the admissions.
Look at that.
So she's the first one that has graduated, but she didn't come to work for our firm. But we have 2 other kids. Actually, the young lady I mentioned to you, Tiana Bohannon, who was perhaps the best mock trial, the most natural, had a few hiccups and had some problems, but she got back on her feet, and she's gone to college, and she dropped out after the first 6 or 7 months. But then we got her back on her feet, or she got herself back on her feet. I guess we helped, but I guess she really did it herself.
I imagine that that's the sort of activity for a high school kid, inner city or otherwise, that really is formative. And in a lot of ways, self-esteem, right, is one. But to be able to communicate publicly and hear your voice echoing and facing fear and
having someone believe in them.
Yeah, there's so many. I'll tell you what, the parallel for me is moot court and law school. I think I learned more in moot court than I did in any law school class and in any job since then. Yeah, I mean, I think that getting up when it's still okay to fail, right? And being surrounding yourself with professionals who do that thing that you're doing and do it all day long is such a rare and unique experience. And I mean, it's one of the things that is underlying. You know about our essay contest. Are you reading? Are you reading essays in it? Did you read any?
No, you didn't. Once again, like in Natasha, the reason I am not
there
is
you
that
go.
nobody has asked me to.
Oh, dang it.
We'll put him on the Nally. Put him on the list for
you're on next
year.
year's list. But the point is, I really think that. I mean, when I think of like civic duty, right? I think of professionals helping students. Like, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, right? Is the 3 of us around this table, are blessed to have gotten to a point in our careers where A, we're doing what we love to do, but B, we have some measure of success and some measure of influence. And if we are able to share that, man, you talk about, we talked earlier about how, like, 1 in 5 businesses are going to fail, or it's like right? I feel like I fail at, or 1 in 5 businesses are going to succeed, right? I feel like 1 in 5 things I say per day are not moronic, right? Like, most of the ideas I have are ridiculous, but being able to share those successes with other students is so valuable, because they're going to make those same 4 out of 5 mistakes that I did if I don't share it with them, So I commend you, Jim Lawniczak. Good for you for doing that.
So hopefully we'll have 2 more of our youngins. They're both in law school now.
Yeah, excellent.
Come out of law school. The other one thing, I remember one of them, in point of what you just said, Alex, one of them asked me, sort of, well, what can I do for you now that you've given me all this help? And I said, well, your job is to do the same thing. Once you make it, right? And then you and I had the same idea. There were people that helped us, right?
Yep.
And we can't pay them back. And for me, by the time I'm now 65, most of the people help me are now not with us anymore. But what they have to do is they have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
When they're 35, 40, 50, and there's new people coming up, they can give back by helping those people.
Just the fact that these students from Shaw, which was very similar to the Collinwood students, I would think, just the fact that they went on to hold on jobs, not to mention going to college and then law school, is that's, I mean, and that is all by the work of just somebody caring about them. So I commend you, because that's phenomenal.
Nice job, Jim Lawniczak.
All right, so Lexus. Let's talk about Lexus.
I love Lexus.
Let's go, before we get to Lexus, while we were talking about mock trials, I remembered this. this episode of This American Life where they were talking about debate teams in the inner city.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever listened to like any debate competition in like, I don't know if it's inner city or not, but high school debate apparently has a racket involved in it. And there's a great episode of This American Life about it. But the point structure, were you exposed to this at all during mock trial?
No. Never.
Like,
I know when I was a really young kid, I went to Stowe High School. I remember in 10th grade, I was on the debate team, and I went to 3 or 4 debates, but I didn't understand anything about it. I just sort of told to go talk, and I went and talked. I don't even remember who won.
Yeah. So, and I think there might be another word for it. It's not just like debate, like you're debating an issue and you're talking and one person talks at a time and it's conversational and fluid. This debate is, and it's high stakes and it's highly competitive. It's freaking cutthroat, right? But the way the point structure works is you get points for expressing the idea. And so, and in the allotted time. And so each time you make an idea in a cohesive thought, right, in a cohesive sentence, you get a point. It's almost like wrestling.
So
right?
It's almost like whoever has talked about the problem knows what the ideas are.
Yeah.
And they've got a list of them. There's 35 ideas.
It's kind of like that. So when you listen to this, and that's why you have to listen to this episode of This
So the
American.
faster you talk, the more points you get.
Is it forensics? Is that what it is? Maybe it's forensics. Maybe that's what the name of this particular kind of debate is. But you listen to them, and it's like speed talking, right? And you can barely understand what they're saying. But it's hilarious. It's bizarre, very entertaining. You got to check it out. I think it's forensics. I could be wrong.
Speed debating.
But this episode. Now I got to finish the story. This episode talked about how this is why I was thinking about it was inner city. How this one inner city school that nobody ever expected to win came in and they used their own style of debate to totally break all the rules that have always been in this type of debate for like 50 years. And so my initial characterization was wrong because they were going up against Ivy League schools or prep schools, private prep schools, right? And so these inner city schools would get in there and it would be like poetry slams. Right, it would be like really emotional, and they would get really racial, right? Like in the topic, like they would inject racial themes into the topic, right? And the other schools didn't know how to react to it, right? They didn't want to like debate the opposite. And it's hilarious. It was a hilarious episode, but just listening to them do it is highly entertaining. Anyway, Lexus. Let's talk about Lexus.
Before we dig into it, let's find out exactly what it is. Because I have no idea what it is.
What, Lexus?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's a research database, right? So LexisNexis used to be.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
but Lexis is very big in the legal research world.
When I worked for my sister, we used
and Lexis Publications.
Yeah, and Jim is a big cheese in the Lexus world.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yes, I write for them.
Yes.
Okay.
So and you write volumes of bankruptcy knowledge.
Other things.
Oh, not just bankruptcy?
Yes. Now that I have more time, I've been writing other things, and I find it very interesting to learn about, because I have to learn the law and then make sure everything is really updated.
Yeah.
So I did antitrust, and I did trade secrets. I know all about trade secrets.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
You can't tell us because they're secrets.
No, but we know now.
Oh.
You know what the first trade secret was that got misappropriated?
Was it? It wasn't the
People?
Coke. It wasn't Coke.
Nope. Way before then.
Way before then.
The Emperor Constantine stole it. Back in the 400s. Yes. What did he steal?
Was it alchemy related?
No. Silk.
Silk.
He sent the monks to China, and they returned with silkworms. And mulberry leaves, yes, and they stole the silk from the Chinese, and so silk started to be made in Istanbul or Constantinople back then. Yes.
They clearly did not have any enforceable non-compete or
the Chinese
confidentiality agreement.
Trademark.
The silk monopoly.
Is that right? That's interesting.
Wow.
Here's trade secret.
But Chinese, and then where was it made now, or where did it start then?
Well, it was stolen by the Emperor Constantine, so he took it to Constantinople. He started making silk in Constantinople with silkworms that he had snuffled out of China.
Don't you think China's better off than they are? So it really didn't hurt them that much?
I don't know.
Back in the 400s?
Well, now, I mean, just
now that's a long time.
future on.
It's a long time.
Wait, did the Emperor
Alice was
Constantine
born
specifically send? Was he like Putin trying to disrupt our elections? Was he
No,
like?
he wanted to make money.
He's like,
he sent the monks to
go into
China to come back with the silkworms.
And the monks
and the technology.
know us.
Why was that? Well,
Technology.
hold on a second. Do you say that that's the first trade secret because the Chinese back then took like steps to protect it and
They
it had
did.
economic value?
Absolutely. It
All
had
right.
huge economic value.
All right,
Silk
that makes sense.
Was really.
What steps did they take to protect their
they,
methodology?
Just like Coke, they tried not to let anybody know how to make silk.
Was it limited to people within the wall?
I don't think they were even. When did the wall go up?
I don't know. But I have no idea.
We know when it's coming down.
You're the one writing for Lexus, Jim. Hey, I bet I know another trade secret story.
Yeah. I'll put it in.
Glass in Venice.
Oh yeah.
Do you know that story?
No.
It was another Italian story that I learned on my trip to Italy. So, glass that we see like around this conference room, see-through glass like on windows, wasn't always the original glass back in medieval times that most people had was stained glass, was like plate glass, right? Glass that you couldn't see through with the transparency that you can see through in windows, right? Mm-hmm. And they used it in churches a lot. They used it for glass to drink out of, right? But it wasn't like that. It was the colorful, pretty glass. And Venice had and still has this island called Murano. So you've heard of Murano glass, maybe? I don't know. Murano was
Morons, but
no, it's Murano,
okay.
and that's where they have all these glass blowing factories there, and they still do to this day. And it's an island in Venice, and they became known throughout Italy as being the finest glass manufacturers ever, and it was because of the value of Murano glass that the Venetian government said, if you're on Murano making glass, you're not allowed to get off that island, right?
Ever in your life?
You're staying on that island except with the permission of the Venetian princes.
Oh.
So, and you're not allowed to go to that island either to visit, right? Except with the Venetian princes' permission. So, a couple things happen as a result of this. Number one, a lot of incest, right? And inbreeding. Number two, their glass became a lot more valuable. Number three is their glass industry became the most innovative, right? So it was Murano where they also invented, or Venice, I think, in that area, where they also invented glass for telescopes and microscopes and magnifying glasses, right? And I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think that a lot of the glass that we use today that is not plate glass and stained glass came from Venice, right? So, and it was partly because they were protecting their trade secrets. Mm-hmm. But I would think at the same time that also kept innovation down because it was not competitive. But it was so competitive within Murano, mm-hmm. I think, is the thing. But I would still think that...
I think we're going to keep this out of LexisNexis.
Yeah. I don't know.
We just don't have enough facts there yet.
Well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of trade secret stories in Murano glass, Jim. I think you ought to look into it. I could be...
I will.
Yeah. Most of them will probably prove that I'm totally full of it on everything I just said. But I bet you there's something there.
Well, most of these treatises need to be updated usually about every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
The idea is to have an updated state of the law to sell to the customers, and so really, they're loose leaf books that you just update, and the pages come out and new pages go in.
Have you ever written anything non-professional, like a novel or a play?
No, should I? I should be John Grisham. I could be really rich.
You could. You got good stories.
I know. No. I read my own book, though, for Lexus. This is key. Everyone should buy it. It's called, you should buy it, Alex. Your law firm needs it. Lending Institutions in the Bankruptcy Code.
I'm buying 17 copies.
It only costs about $800 a copy.
That's it?
Maybe just one.
No, 7. It's a contract, buddy. I came here in good faith, and
I'm not sure there's any consideration for that, Jim. Anyway.
Well, they'll be in the mail to you with an invoice.
And we'll put the link on our podcast.
We have to edit that section out of the podcast. All right, Jim, lightning round questions. You ready?
Okay.
You ready? Molly, was there anything else you wanted to cover with Jim in this interview before we do lightning round questions?
I was circled and yeah.
Jim Lawniczak, biggest success in your life, and don't say my kids.
Or your wife.
Or your wife.
Really, I can't say that.
No.
The biggest success that I hold on to. I guess just my career.
Okay. Good. Well, since '88, my math is not good, but that's multiple decades at one law firm. That's rare.
I know.
Yeah.
Are you going to get a gold watch when you retire?
Probably not.
Are you a partner?
I'm come off council.
Is that true?
Yes, I've moved off council.
Really?
So I don't have to work as much.
I
don't work as much. It's a genius idea. But they don't pay me as much either.
You should come to the Gertzberg law firm. I'll make you partner again.
Really? I can be partner?
Oh, yeah.
But here's what I need. I need you to agree to pay me $100,000 a year for doing nothing. Because, by the way, nobody does nothing better than me. Absolutely, right?
Well, as long as you bring in $200,000 and work.
Man, that's a really tempting offer, Jim. $100,000 to do nothing. Oh, Lord.
Even the Alex Gertzberg law firm probably could figure out that's not a good idea.
I mean, I'd have to really assemble the board here to
see if anyone else wants to give up their nothing job.
Right.
You got a bunch of people with nothing jobs here?
No, they're worker bees.
Well,
what you need to know is your biggest success.
Alex Gertzberg.
Stop it.
That wasn't the question.
Oh, I thought you were pointing to me.
I was trying to bring it back.
Alex hired me for a case, and we did really good.
We did.
Oh, okay.
That was a big success.
That was a big success. No, the next question. Well, because you said big success and you pointed to me, and I turned red, Molly, just now.
Actually, the biggest success I had in my bankruptcy career was the winning Pittsburgh Steel Corp.
Right. I worked on that a little bit.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't everyone in Calfee touch that case?
Pretty much. But we were counsel for them in their second bankruptcy from 2000. They came out of bankruptcy in 2004, and it was one of the very few. Actually, it turns out if you look at it, I mean, Judge Bodo was a judge in Youngstown who handled a lot of Chapter 11 reorganization bankruptcy cases, and he said basically he only had 2 successful cases in his 20-year career, and that was one of the 2. When we saved that company. And I was part of it. And I wasn't the main guy. There was a lot of reasons that company got saved, including some luck. But I mean, that company got saved, and all its jobs got saved, and
I love that.
Facilities got saved, and then unfortunately, they kept selling out, and eventually, in about 2012ish or 13, most of the facilities didn't make it anymore.
I love that you want these. You'll probably make more money if they don't succeed because they're getting in more trouble.
No,
and I love the fact that he wants them to succeed.
Yeah.
And really quick, how does one pick you to be a LexisNexis writer? Like, what did you do to say, he should write for LexisNexis?
Well, you know what? It goes back a long, long time ago into the mid-1990s. In the mid-1990s, when Congress was considering changing the bankruptcy law, they formed the National Bankruptcy Review Commission. And the secretary for that commission was, at the time, a lawyer and a bankruptcy professor from New York. My God, I'm forgetting his name, but he came to Cleveland, and he was the editor at the time of the Collier's. Collier's has been since bought by LexisNexis. Collier's had the definitive bankruptcy treatise, and he was the editor of it. And we spent about 2 days giving testimony before the commission. Larry King was his name. He was a professor at New York University, professor of bankruptcy, and he passed away.
It was a who you knew.
Well, I didn't really know him. I met him, and I said to Larry, "Boy, I sure would like to write for Collier's. Wouldn't that be cool?" And he said, "Oh my God, Colliers is like a 17-volume set." He says, "My God, we sure need writers. We got a 17-volume set. We're looking for writers all the time, and sign you up." So he signed me up, and I first started writing then for the Collier. And it turns out, I thought I was really a good writer at the time. It's really kind of funny because with these treatises, you can kind of go back, and they're living, and see what you wrote in 1990 and what you wrote in 2000, what you wrote in 2005, and you can sort of see it. And I really wasn't very good.
You got better.
And it's part of that Malcolm Gladstone concept, right? The 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Once you spend 10,000 hours on something, you're finally getting to be good at it.
Right.
So when I spent the first 1,000 hours, I wasn't all that good.
Yeah.
But that's sort of my start, and then I kind of liked doing it, and so I would tell the editors at Lexus or Colliers, and you got anything else, and they would give me other projects, and I think I did a good job, and so they would
keep coming back.
use them.
Well, I want everyone to know that was our first official call-in question.
Really?
Really?
How
Yes,
did
because that was my sister who is
So
an
your sister
attorney.
called in?
Oh, and she
And
knew
she
that Jim
texted
was on this.
me, because we had just come back from a trip, and I was reading, she was reading, I was driving, she was reading your bio to me. And
she wants to be a
said
Lexus writer
She
too?
wants to be a Lexus writer.
Really?
Yeah, she's probate. Yes, it's her.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
You could pull some
I'm gonna hook
strings
the
there,
two of
I
Jim.
you.
could either introduce her to somebody.
I'm going to hook the two
Look
of you
at that.
together, but
There
that's
you
our
go.
I
first.
assume she really needs to buy that $800 book, though.
I am sure she'll
No, but-
start. You know what? Let's just say, and I know my brother-in-law won't be listening. Let's just say she did some damage in New York City. She yeah.
She's not
every
buying any $800
store,
treatises this week.
every store we were at, that woman was purchasing. So
Lovely lady,
Oh,
your
good
sister,
question.
by the way.
she is a great
Yeah.
person.
James, biggest failure.
Oh, no.
What was your biggest
I never
failure?
failed, have I?
By however you choose to
That's
define.
what they always ask people. I can't come. I don't know.
Well, you can define failure broadly to mean anything that
That
you
I'm
want it to
happy
mean.
with?
And you
Yeah.
feel free to use your kids.
Yeah. Start with your kids.
No, they're all really good.
I'm just kidding. I know I read
Come
them.
on, what's your big regret, learning experience, failure? I can keep
Well,
going.
he did talk about the early days of Lexus writing.
Well, you know what? In truth, back in the 1980s, early 1980s, Delaware, which has now become a really famous bankruptcy jurisdiction, Delaware was a small place and nobody filed bankruptcies. And it was a huge opportunity for a bankruptcy lawyer. And I kind of saw it. And I kind of knew it, but I didn't do anything about it. I could have been rich. I could have, had I in 1980 decided to relocate to Delaware and become a Delaware bankruptcy lawyer at a time when there weren't very many, and Delaware was about to explode into the
But
bankruptcy
then
mecca.
you wouldn't be here,
I know,
and that would be sad for us.
but I'd be
Yeah.
rich, and
That
I'd
is
have a
true.
yacht.
That is
Probably.
true.
I don't
Well,
want a yacht.
you're rich in company and in love
Yes.
and in town,
Yes.
so I wouldn't worry about it.
And you can have that mug
Yeah.
or that glass.
I really can.
You can't have that glass.
I love this
Thanks for
glass.
giving away
and
my.
you can have my office mug. too.
My God, I need. You know what? This actually matches. We have a Calfee, and I think somebody broke one of mine.
Oh,
we have a
That is
Calfee
exactly
100th
what-
anniversary cup. It's this
I
very
have
same
that.
cup. This is my coffee cup at home, and this will
Wow.
fit right in there. And the few that I have left, because people keep breaking mine.
It
Is there anything else of my office you'd like to give away?
Well, I can replace this
There's
from
some
my
books over there.
office.
Can I just take my pick?
That elephant.
Molly
is
has a
fun.
question for you, Jim. Go
Yes.
ahead,
You
Molly.
know?
I do.
Uh-oh.
Are there any woman or one woman that was very influential in your life? A mother figure, a maternal figure.
Oh no. Well, there's my current nurse girlfriend, Claudia. She's very influential to me.
Okay.
She's my
Good answer, Jim.
Yes, it is a good answer.
keeping me happy.
Good. How is she influential?
Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to ask her how she's keeping him happy.
And how is she keeping you happy, Jim?
Podcast.
I swear, we'll edit this
I
out.
mean, like every night we talk about things that we did and are important to us, and
Yeah?
it helps focus on what's happening in life.
Nice.
And
That's awesome. All right, last question, Jim.
last question. Okay.
what is an embarrassing thing from your past that nobody knows about?
Don't you like my question?
I don't. Yeah.
No. And you're not allowed to leave until you tell us.
Was it when Alex Gertzberg?
If you could throw one in that Alex was involved in that, you get extra points for that.
I don't think.
Well, you know what? It was when Alex Gertzberg was trying to give me a case. And somebody else in our office really thought they ought to get it. They tried to sort of outcompete me for it.
What? What case was that?
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
say names?
Yeah, it's true.
I want to know what this. I don't remember.
But they
this,
failed.
You got
But Alex Gertzberg was my man.
I said we want Jim Lawniczak.
And this was when he
I
was
will
in
accept.
his own practice now? Or when you were working
This was when I was at Broadvox.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was.
Yeah. That, by the way, I will tell you this. I will tell you this, Molly Gepler.
Did you know that, Alex Gertzberg?
I didn't know that.
You
I didn't. I
didn't even get that far.
No.
I didn't
Two
have to,
men
I didn't have to
fighting
pull,
over
I didn't have to
you.
pull the Alex card.
No, here, I will tell you this, right? So I had a client, and there was a bankruptcy issue, and we got Jim Lawniczak involved, and it was a thorny issue. It was really ugly.
Thorny, is
Yeah.
that a
Ugly,
law
Yeah,
term?
yeah. That's straight from Black's Law Dictionary. Thorny, it means ugly. And Jim, you just killed it in that case. You really did. I mean, if you want, I will tell you this, and I can say this because I know that Jim will eventually be a Gertzberg law firm attorney. That if you,
He says that to me
you
all the
want
time.
someone,
You're gonna be a Gertzberg law firm attorney?
you want somebody who is like, who can outsmart the other guy, right? If in a bankruptcy issue, you want to call Jim Lawniczak. Because there was a lot of wargaming and a lot of strategizing that you were able to play out multiple chess moves ahead.
Yeah,
Way,
it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
We had that guy from Boston who thought he was the God's gift to
To
attorneys.
bankruptcy.
But you know what? The funny thing is when you have people that think that, they're kind of sometimes you can outmaneuver them because they're always trying to make...
Cockiness gets
No, they're trying. What they're doing is they want to be sure that the outcome is such that they look good.
Yes.
You see, so all you have to do is kind of play for that and be willing to accept the premise that it doesn't have to look good for you.
Right.
And
That's
give
right.
them the glory.
Yeah.
But yet you get the
the money.
well the result.
Right.
That's absolutely right. All right. Well, clearly, don't give Jim the Brazilian national drink before you ask him the embarrassing question.
Yes.
But everybody out there, do buy Lending Institutions and the Bankruptcy Code. It's guaranteed to put you to sleep at night.
Forget Ambien.
Better than any sleeping pill.
We will put the link on for any of you who are totally interested in that.
Although my version is not coming out till about November.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll have
See,
time
we're
to-
laughing, but what if there's a huge spike in sales after this podcast comes out?
Well, we want to
Lexus
wait
is
till
gonna-
for his book.
Oh, is that true?
You could buy the one now. You just wouldn't get my well, then you would get my update.
Yeah, you'll get your
you
pocket
can buy
part.
it right now. Here's the idea. If you buy it now, you'll get the current version of the book. But when my update comes out in November, you'll get
it
that
as
too.
well. Okay.
And it's going to be really good.
Well, that's
And
worth the
You're going to, yes.
And
You're going
if
to learn
you-
all about bankruptcy and secured creditors and lending and also, it's going to be great. And like I said, best thing to put you to sleep at night. Just start reading that baby at page 1, and by page 8, you'll be sound asleep.
And if you buy it now, the first 100 buyers, Jim will come to your house
Gets a
and personally
Gertzberg
deliver
and
it
Chamber coffee mug.
and give you a historic
In the
lesson
Cleveland area,
bankruptcy.
absolutely.
In his bikini, which then he'll have an
Then-
embarrassing
well, okay.
moment.
Wow.
I'm
Man,
ready.
the phone is ringing off the hook, ladies and
Alex
gentlemen.
will come with me.
All right,
I'll
kids.
just come to video.
This has just been enlightening. We really covered a lot of ground, a lot of territory here, Molly.
Lots. Good luck, Nellie.
Yeah. So, if anyone out there, and this is what we say, Jim, when this happens, if anyone out there knows embarrassing stories about Jim that few people know about,
Yes.
you want to email Alex Gertzberg.
Yes.
At where?
It's
The best
ag@gertzberglaw.com.
Or the best podcast.
What?
Well,
Do
I
we
told
know
all
her?
my daughters and Claudia to listen to the podcast.
Okay.
I think they will.
It'll come out in a few weeks.
And they can subscribe, and then they want to subscribe first.
What does that
and
mean?
just go to thebestpodcastever.com and just click subscribe so that she'll be alerted when this comes out.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that less than $800?
That is free.
Free? It's way less
Free.
than $800.
Yeah, and then like us on Facebook, and she'll get to see the selfie that we're going to take right now. And she'll
I'm not on Facebook, but everybody else is.
Yeah.
They love Facebook.
Get to see lots of good
So
stuff.
what should I tell them? Tell me again.
They're going
And the
to
listeners.
go to thebest.Podcast.Ever.com.
Here it is.
And they are going to subscribe so that they are alerted when every episode drops.
Drops.
And
that's
then
right.
you want to go to Facebook, which is also called the Best Podcast Ever, and like us to see all the great things that we post.
Right.
And when is this going to be available for people to listen to and learn?
You know what? They'll have to subscribe and find that out.
Really?
That's
Yep.
right. But when they're listening, they'll know because they're listening.
Oh,
Yes.
that's so we haven't really so
This
now
is
we'll
very
probably
meta.
be editing this out because it really doesn't help them.
No, we're leaving it in.
Oh, totally.
All right, Jim, are you working on anything right now that you'd like the kids listening at home to tune into or know about? Perhaps some big.
Yeah, he's updating the Lexi.
Oh, yeah.
Is that it? Is that the most exciting thing that's happening?
Yeah, all of April I have to work on. I'm working on chapter 1. What I'm doing is I'm sort of rewriting the beginning because what I want to do that isn't in there now is give sort of a general idea. So talk to people about how do companies get to be banked. We didn't even talk about that there. How does it
Save
happen?
it for next time, Jim.
how
Let's not spoil everything.
How do you get into that? What happens
I
to poor
agree. I'd
people?
like to
How does
know
that
that.
happen?
And I'd like to know, I think one of the ones that gets brought up a lot in business bankruptcy world is Donald Trump's bankruptcy. And that we
What do you
should
mean bankruptcy? You mean bankruptcies?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so we should have
Donald Trump loves the bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, arguably, Donald Trump was using the bankruptcy laws in the way that they were intended by Congress in the 70s.
Just use that word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Go Donald.
He loves it. Yeah, he knows the law.
Molly, that one was for you.
Thank you.
All right, Molly, is there anything that you would like to say to the kids at home?
Oh, no.
Well, this has been lovely.
So
This
good.
has been very interesting. Jim, thank you for coming and
Jim.
It's
hanging out
almost
with us.
like the movie with Marissa Tomei. You're a lovely, lovely witness. Remember?
Ah, yes, that's the with Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
You're a
cousin
lovely,
Vinny.
lovely witness.
my cousin Vinny. That's right.
Yes.
Lovely
Yes.
witness.
Yeah,
That's
this
right.
is exactly like that.
All right. Thanks, Jim. This has been awesome. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Bye, Alex George.
Bye, Molly Gebler.
Bye, everybody.